I wish I could say the trigger was something grand. A revelation, an explicit threat, a cinematic moment, the kind where the protagonist runs while the door slams behind her. But the truth is, what broke the cycle was small. So small that if someone were watching from the outside, they might not even notice. Endings don't begin with explosions. They begin with details, with what the heart registers before the mind understands. That day, after the sentence I didn't swallow, the one that changed the way I existed inside that house, he became strange, more alert, more suspicious, like a predator sensing that its prey was no longer following the script. He hovered through the rooms in a tense silence, as if waiting for me to slip, to give in, to return to the folded woman he had shaped for so long. And for a long time, that's exactly what I was, a folded woman. But that late afternoon, as I was folding some clothes in the bedroom, the gesture happened. The small gesture that opened a crack in the ground, holding that relationship together. He entered the room without knocking, as he always did. I had my back to him, folding one of his t-shirts. A shirt that, for years, represented so many nights of fear, so many apologies, so many forced silences. I held the fabric in my hands for a second, took a deep breath, and tried to keep my newly found calm. Then he said, "You're getting way too full of yourself." It wasn't new. He used that sentence like an emotional leash whenever I showed even the smallest spark of individuality. But this time, the words didn't land in the same place. They fell on different ground, on a surface already cracked enough to let them echo. I turned slightly, still holding the shirt. Not in anger, but with a kind of clarity that was new to me. And that's when the gesture came. He took a step forward, just one step, but it carried an old intention to intimidate, to create fear, to make my body retreat before my mind could even register it. But my body didn't move. That was it. Exactly that. It wasn't his step. It was the absence of mine. My body, which for years had molded itself to fear as if by reflex, didn't retreat. It stayed still, grounded, as if it had decided on its own that it would no longer run from shadows. And that was the trigger, because he saw it. He saw something he had never seen in me before. Permanence, not strength, not aggression, not confrontation, permanence. The kind of quiet firmness that doesn't need to shout. The kind of courage that doesn't make a scene. It simply stops bending. He frowned, confused, as if standing in front of a woman whose instruction manual he hadn't written. A manual he no longer knew how to control. Then, with poorly disguised contempt meant to hide his own fear, he yanked the t-shirt from my hands, not violently in a physical sense, but symbolically, and said, "Do you really think you have a choice?" That was the final piece of the trigger. Not the sentence itself, but my reaction to it. Because for the first time, I felt a truth rise inside me, one I had never allowed to enter before. I had a choice. I always had. I just couldn't see it. And when he said those words, "Do you think you have a choice?" An old memory surfaced as if it had been saved for that moment. A memory from years before of me telling a friend, "I just need the right moment to leave." And in that instant, standing there with him looking at me as if he still owned some part of my soul, I understood the right moment didn't exist. I had to create it. My body suddenly felt too light for that heavy room. A heat rose in my chest, a mix of adrenaline and clarity that changed my breathing. I didn't say anything, because courage, when it's real, rarely speaks. It acts. It decides. It breaks. He noticed the silence, but misunderstood it. He thought I was giving in, returning to the place he knew. But the opposite was true. I was already leaving, just not physically yet. His gesture was the trigger. But the real break happened inside me. I went to the bathroom afterward, my steps calm. I closed the door gently. I sat on the cold floor, rested my head against the wall, and took a deep breath. I felt my heart pounding as if it were trying to break through every internal cage I had maintained for years. And for the first time in so long, I cried not out of fear, but out of recognition. I recognized the woman who was coming back, the woman I had left behind, the woman who knew she deserved more than surviving on emotional crumbs. There, on that floor, in that breath, in that clarity, I understood a truth that burned. The cycle doesn't break when he screams. The cycle breaks when you stop reacting the way he expects. I ran my hand over my own face, as if rediscovering something precious. And his sentence, "Do you think you have a choice?" echoed again in my mind, almost mocking. But this time I answered it silently. "I don't think so." I know. The trigger wasn't rage. It wasn't a dramatic breakup. It was a silent choice. And silent choices are the most dangerous ones for men who need control. It was in that moment, in that bathroom, on that cold floor, that I realized I was ready. Maybe not to leave yet. Maybe not to face everything all at once. But I was ready to never again become who he needed me to be. The cycle was broken, even if he didn't know it yet. If this story resonates with you, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss what comes next. And be sure to watch the next video where this journey continues in the next section, or perhaps in the next series, as the consequences of this choice begin to unfold.